Sad Dad Games podcast. I'm Shan.
I'm Eric.
I'm Tucker.
And I'm Emerly.
We are going to be talking about the Ocarina of Time, and we have broken into two parts. We recorded very long because we are loquacious about this nonsense. So we're going to just smash cut straight into some random part of the episode. And
whatever we happened to be talking about, yeah.
We're going to pretend that it was a completely different recording. It's the same thing. We have there's no downbeat. And so it's going to be abrupt and you're going to have to eat it.
It'll flow seamlessly. It'll be great. It'll be super professional and we're all going to love it. Yeah.
And cut.
Now that we've defeated Morpha, we awaken Princess Ruto as the sage. She gives us the medallion, blah, blah, blah. Now we go into one of my favorite areas. We go to well to get the lens of truth, and then to the Shadow Temple. I've got a lot of fun thoughts about the Shadow Temple. How do you guys, what are your thoughts, Shadow Temple and the well?
This time it was my favorite temple. Yeah. And I think I liked the Fire Temple because it was I don't know. I was quick
because
about
it has a bunch of adorable Gorons.
Right. And but I was playing on a janky controller at the time because the Bluetooth wasn't connecting, and the controller had no good tolerance on the analog stick. It was spongy, and so I wasn't playing with save states, and so the stakes of circling around to get the Megaton hammer, I was falling in several times, and I'd fall to the bottom and I have to work away. Playing without save states, the stakes are back and it is horrific, right? Your heart is pounding. That's the way you're supposed to play. Yeah. But the Shadow, where was I going with this? It's just the Shadow Temple. There was just something about the linearity. It felt like a change of pace after all the other temples. That was a nice respite, but atmospherically and everything else that they did, and the puzzles and everything inside of it made the linearity worth it, because I was constantly enjoying everything that I was engaging with in that temple.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's linearity in video games kind of gets crapped on a lot, and I feel like sometimes it's not a bad thing to just kind of have a path to go on and to go through that path, as long as it's a fun path. And so I really liked the Shadow Dungeon this time as well, and I have never paid a lot of attention to why there's a spooky scary Shadow Temple in the middle of Kakariko Village. So why do you guys what are your thoughts on why is the Shadow Temple in Kakariko? Why is that the setting for the Shadow Temple? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it's also connected to the graveyard.
Yeah.
So
spirits.
You guys ready for me to blow your freaking minds?
I know there's more to it because I think I've watched deep dives on this, but I cannot remember. So please enlighten us.
So I think the Shadow Temple lore-wise is the one that struck me the most this time. And this is stuff that I once I was looking into it more and doing some research, like I said, reading some stuff, watching some videos, it seemed very obvious. Of course, this is what the Shadow Temple is. But I just before Ocarina of Time, the events in Ocarina of Time start, Hyrule is embroiled in a civil war. When Link is a baby, they're towards the end of a bloody civil war, because Link's mom dies, gives him to the Deku Tree, and so
this
we know
is in
that's
manga.
Yeah. Well, it's also in the game. The Deku Tree,
right.
After the Forest Temple, the Deku Tree Sprout tells Link about this, that he's not actually a Kokiri, he's a Hylian, and then he tells him about his mom dying at the end of the Civil War.
And it's just an animation of fire, and then he just gives the exposition. It's
here's fire. It's probably a war. Yeah.
And there was a civil war. It's oh, okay. Well,
and it was real bad. Trust me. So Hyrule has this bloody civil war that the civil war ends in all of the races kind of being united in Hyrule under the rule of the King of Hyrule. And so this kind of calls into mind the people that during that time period who lived in Kakariko Village were the Sheikah. The Sheikah tribe were the ones that founded the Kakariko Village, and the Sheikah have been attendants and sort of not servants, but they serve the royal family in a very direct capacity. And so the Sheikah have this shadow temple built in their graveyard in Kakariko. And there's a lot of signs and implications there that this is where Sheikah would likely take enemies of the crown to imprison them, to torture them during this wartime period, which is a very dark thing for a Zelda game, like directly referencing a bloody war and showing a literal, like actual torture chambers of like where, you know, the Sheikah who might have worked as like spies or maybe even assassins or like kind of sneaky emissaries for the royal family and their enemies during this wartime period, and taking them to this dungeon and this torture chamber. And so when you kind of look at the Shadow Temple through those eyes, it kind of recontextualizes how kind of creepy everything down there is. It's like, and if you play the original the original release of Ocarina of Time before they kind of edited some of the things out, there's a lot more blood. There's like blood on the floors and on the walls, and there's a lot more spooky imagery.
There's a lot of blood.
And like it's pretty, if they were to make it like with today's graphics, it would be fairly gruesome. Like it's very, very unique setting for a Zelda game.
Yeah, you were like you were saying, I do remember like going into a room and there's like these wooden posts and there's chains hanging off of it, and there's blood on the floor. And I kind of like did a double take because, you know, I know this game so well that I never really registered what I'm looking at. And this time around, I did a double take.
That's fine. Like,
yeah, I'm like, that's a little creepy, but yeah, it's fine. It's probably exactly. So I didn't look into it, and so now you saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's kind of creepy, but I love it. Yep, creepy.
Well, like
Silent Hill 2 vibes.
Those little chambers before you get into the temple, like around the graveyard, where it's like just bones everywhere, and just it's pretty dark.
And mummies.
And
it's like what was going down in that civil war. It's like it was pretty nasty. A lot of fire, I bet.
And you're bringing up a lot of points of like I think of all these temples and these dungeons as just like little puzzle rooms that I never tied them into being a part of a narrative. It was just like everything else in my head. It's like everything outside of the temple is a coherent story-based thing, but you get inside and it's like, okay, you're going to throw that all out because we're just going to design something that's fun. And so making it into story by calling it a torture chamber, and that's why there are gallows everywhere. It's like, okay, well, this is getting interesting. This is getting weird.
Well, then you have like the boat, which always makes me think of the River of Styx, like kind of taking dead into the afterlife. That's how I always thought it was, but I don't know if that's actually what they were.
Yeah, I can't really
for.
Explain the weird ghost boat in the context of a prison and a torture chamber, but you know, maybe
then it like drops into this like open floor that's foggy and creepy. It was a ghost boat, but like
it was the antechamber before getting to Bongo Bongo. Maybe that's where they would go to deliver the dead.
Which can we talk about Bongo Bongo for a second?
By far, is he the best?
By far the scariest, most intense boss battle aside from Ganondorf and Ganon, with the most ridiculous name. Like I want to know what happened there. They were like this creepy, spooky, atmospheric shadow temple, and at the end you're going to fight this horrifying, invisible monster with disembodied like stumps and bloody hands. And what should we name him? Bongo Bongo.
Bongo Bongo.
It's just ridiculous.
He's playing
like
drums.
It's named after how he moves. He bongos and then he bongos again.
Yeah, that's got to be it. He bongos and then he bongos once more. Yeah.
Oh man, like, not that I don't know Japanese obviously, but like there are certain names that are words that they borrow, so they say the same words in English and in Japanese, and I feel like Bongo Bongo is probably a direct translation. Like pocket monsters, right? It's like Poketoo monster. I imagine Bongo Bongo is like Bongo Bongo. And I
hope so. Yeah.
That just delights me.
Yeah. I think that he's got a
Bongo Bongo,
a delightfully silly name.
I mean, it literally says he plays the bongo drums, which we kind of already know that.
Well, but he plays the bongo drum. There's just one. It's you stand on one giant drum. There's not two of them. They're not bongos. His name should be Bongo.
Bongo Bongo.
Yeah, it's an onomatopoeia. I bet that it's something like that. It's maybe a Japanese onomatopoeia for playing the drums. I should have done my homework on that, but it's a very silly name for a very spooky dungeon. And so, yeah, I like that dungeon a lot. And then you awaken the sage at the end of that one, medallion, on to the next thing. So and then the next dungeon being the infamous in the Gerudo Desert. So you first have to go to Gerudo outpost. What's it called? The Gerudo.
It's the fortress.
Gerudo Fortress, yeah. And so how a lot of people feel about the Water Temple is how I feel about Gerudo Fortress. I freaking hate Gerudo Fortress. I can't stand it.
This time.
I have never played it right once. I am always like, I rescue 3 of the carpenters, and then I wander around for an hour, and then I look it up online because I'm so mad and I can't remember where the last stupid carpenter is. I've played this game like 20 times, and I can never find all 4 of them on my own. I hate
Is the last one where you have to like go up high and then you drop down?
I don't even know. I was so angry that I couldn't remember.
That was the one I struggled with.
So
they
super atmospheric.
You, and then you have to start over and over again.
So super atmospheric. I love the vibe of Gerudo Fortress. I love the music of Gerudo Fortress, which we'll get to the music in a little bit. But like, I do not like looking for those friggin' carpenters. It's not my jam.
Like them, Sam. He is.
I do not like them, Sam. I is. But then once you rescue them, it opens a way up to the Spirit Temple, which is a very cool temple because you get to play a little bit as Child Link and as Adult Link, which I think is a fun wrinkle that they didn't do a ton of throughout the game, but I like it in this part of the game a lot. So you do like the first half of the dungeon as Child Link and then the second half as Adult Link. And I thought that was a super fun way to structure that
They
dungeon.
kind of did this with the Shadow Temple too, where you had to go back as Child Link. So they don't do it with every single temple, but they did it with the last 2 where you have to go back. So I love how they force you to do both versions of Link. I think it's very creative how they do that. And where it's like, oh, well, you can only crawl through this space as a child, or you can only hop onto this ledge when you're an adult. I think it's so creative, so amazing. I just want to say too, before, like, kind of in this area, you meet that one Gerudo, the one that gives you the pass, and she ends up becoming the sage, and she kind of hits on him, Link, or she says something about, if I had known that you were going to grow up to be this attractive.
Every woman that runs into Link hits on him. Like it's a theme throughout the games. Yeah.
Yeah, he could pull, but also they're very horny women.
All of them.
They are an enclave of just all women, and it's a matriarchal society, and they don't have anything to bone because Ganon has left, and so they see some D walking in, and they're like, I want that, please. I know that you're outside of my age range, but there's nothing else here.
They don't
So
care.
it reminds me of Mighty Python and the Holy Grail, where he goes into the castle with all the women. Yeah.
Oh, totally.
And then Lancelot has to save him. And yeah.
What is it that they ask for right at the end? What's the turn? Is it like they want anal sex, or what is it?
No, or oral sex.
Oral sex, sorry.
And then comes the oral sex, after the
Then
spanking.
comes the oral sex after this, and spanking. Lots of spanking.
There's also Futurama, where there's like a planet of all women, and they're like these giant women, and the punishment is snoo snoo, which is sex.
Death by snoo snoo.
Death by snoo snoo. And they're like, yay! And then they find out it's going to crush them and kill them. They're like, oh, never mind. But they're still kind of excited.
Like,
Anyways, you've got Saria, like, she's your friend, but also I feel like there's a bit of a crush there. And then you've got Princess Rudo, and she just is straight up like, oh, we're engaged now. We're getting married.
Lady. Yeah.
Fish lady.
They are betrothed because of the
spiritual stone.
Because the spiritual stone.
Only if Link adheres to Rudo customs. It takes 2 to tango.
No.
And even when
I
you
think
grow up,
Link is willing to
we're
tango.
still engaged. Yeah. And then you've got Malin, who I think he kind of, I don't know if it's canon that he ends up with Malin, or if that was just like fan theory. In one of the versions, he ends up with Malin and raises a family, and that's I don't know. And then you've got this one. There's so many women in this game, and they all are just craving him.
The D.
They want him. They want the D.
Especially when he whips out the Master Sword.
Especially because it's
They
got a
all
lot
want
of
the Master Sword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, you can go on about that.
I was
I
just
just
say
have
I
to
don't
point
know
out,
how
like,
to I don't know how to
how
anchor the
often he gets hit
conversation
on.
back after that. So I'll just do it in a very clunky way. So anyways, so next you do the Spirit Temple, which I think is a really fun thing. Like I said, you do the first half as a kid, second half as an adult, and there's a little bit of interplay between those two sides. Like you can do some things as a kid that help open the pathway up as an adult, which is a lot of fun. And you get the mirror shield here. Lots of fun light puzzles, which kind of becomes a staple in Zelda games down the line. And you fight one of the coolest bosses, I think, at the end of this one. Boss is really cool. And fun fact, she is the only boss in this game besides Ganondorf that has her own theme music. Whoa. The rest of them have kind of standard boss themes, but she has the dun dun da 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 da, like her own Twin Rova theme music. So Twin Rova, super awesome boss battle. Yeah, very cool.
They bring back that leitmotif, obviously, in Majora's Mask, or Mahora's Mask, if you will.
Mahora's Mask, for those educated amongst us, yeah.
Those horrors.
So I don't know, thoughts on this boss battle? I love the Twin Rova boss battle. I think it's super fun.
It's very creative.
It's super creative. It's like, why don't we get creative boss fights like this anymore? And like, I mean, there is a trope in Zelda games where it's like half of them you're just going to shoot them in the eye, but like this game still has a lot of creative bosses, and this was like this is probably the best. However, if I were to rank the bosses of the temples, I would probably say,
excluding Ganon, like excluding the final boss, because that's its own thing.
That transcends the list.
Well, I'd still even say, like, I get a little tired of the Dead Man's Volley. The final Ganon fight, that's cool. That being said, it's like, okay, I would probably put Bongo first. He kind of did it for me. And then Volvagia, I would put second. And then the Witches third. It's almost a dead heat with those two.
A lot of really solid boss battles in this game.
But I love the design of the dragon this time. Like, it really, really impressed me. And just like the way his like fire hair just kind of like flips around and stuff when he pops out. It's like, this is very impressive. I love looking at this. And then Forest, and then water. Is that roughly the same for everyone? It sounds like for you, the Witches are at the highest.
I'd say, yeah, the Witches, and I've always really liked Volvagia is a fun boss fight, but I also really like Phantom Ganon. I haven't thought about trying to order them. It would probably be similar to your list. I'd put maybe, I mean, the Water Temple Morpha is definitely at the bottom, and then I don't know how to. I haven't thought enough about it. I'd have to weigh pros and cons. Because I like the other four so much that they're all pretty neck and neck. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, but yeah, I also love this temple because you get 2 items. For some reason, that makes it feel more special.
Yeah, super cool. You get the gloves or the silver gauntlets and the mirror shield. Double power-ups.
Yeah, exactly. I love me some power-ups.
So, yeah, I like the theming of this dungeon too. I think it's a very cool, like, sand. I don't know. I like sand areas in games, and so I think that, or like desert sand areas. I like desert areas in games, and so I think that the theming of this one is a lot of fun. I think it's got this very kind of decrepit, crumbling, like old temple kind of a vibe to it. I enjoy that a lot. I think it's a super fun temple thematically. And so then at the end of this one, super fun boss battle with Turnrova. Then you awaken Naboru as the Sage of Light, and you get your medallion. And with that, you are finally ready to go and face the Demon King Ganondorf. And the build up to this boss battle, especially the first time I played it, was just like nothing I'd ever seen in a game before. Because you go on this big epic quest, you're doing all of these fun things, and now it's finally like you've got everything you need, it's come to a head, and then you go to the place where Hyrule Castle used to be, and it's just completely gone. There's a huge lava pit, and then a giant plinth of a castle just floating above this lava pit that extends up super high into the sky, and it's just completely the opposite of what Hyrule Castle used to be. You know, bright and cheerful and open and beautiful, and this is claustrophobic and dark and ominous and imposing. And it just sets the theme for what's to come. And I think that the the actual trials within the dungeon are not super duper difficult, but they're fun enough because they're all themed on like the dungeons that you did as an adult. So there's like 5 areas that are themed, and then that kind of leads you to the central area where you finally climb the tower to go fight Ganondorf. And I liked that it was themed after those dungeons that you were in, because it feels kind of like a culmination of everything that you've done. And at the end of each of those areas, the sage pops out and they do a thing. They're like, ta-ta-ta, like they do a Power Rangers pose, and they're like, go Link. And then like they unlock the door for you so that you can climb the tower. And it's just a very like, when I played it as a kid, it was very, just got me amped and ready. And I was just so excited to be here and be ready to save the day, you know?
It's the power of friendship.
The power of friendship.
Yeah, this was Ganon's castle was my favorite place to play this time playing through the game. And I don't remember it being my favorite, but why it was effective was, every temple you go out, you fetch the item, and then it's all centered around that, and you don't end up cross-contaminating other items from other dungeons to finish temples, because they wanted to keep it pretty open and non-linear. And then this was their opportunity to flex with combining items in themed areas, as if they could redesign the temples for like a few rooms, but you're able to use everything that's in your arsenal. And so that allowed them to just like be really creative with their puzzle design. And then also why it's effective is because it's fast. And the rising action before the climax, it's like you really have to change the pacing. You really have to, like, if there's something that's going to impede you right before the climax, you have to make it fast, because you already know where you want to be. And if you throw a bunch of shit in front of the player right before they get there, they're gonna hate you for it.
It's gonna bogs down the pace, because you're pumped and you're ready to go. And nothing is worse than when you're pumped and ready to go, and then a big wall slams in front of you that says, do all this stuff first. And then by the time you've done all that stuff, that energy is gone, and you're not as excited to do what comes after.
Plus, it's like, it's actually giving you like 5 rapid success like wins back to back, and so it's actually pumping you up for the battle.
Well, each area is pretty short. They're like, each to go down each one is like 5-10 minutes maybe to go through each little area to unlock the main pillar to ascend the tower. So, and then you ascend the tower and you face Ganondorf face to face for the first time since you were a kid. You see him very briefly as a kid, but it's like, and this moment is so awesome. I love how Ganondorf, it's just so, it's the perfect combination of like intimidating and then silly in a sort of self-aware way. Like, you go upstairs and he's campy. Playing the organ. Yeah, campy is the right word. He's playing the organ and he's
character driven. It's just characterization of that choice. It's like you're adding so much flavor to who he is.
Yeah. He's it's like a very chin strokey moment for him. Yeah, he's artistic.
It's like it's like what's Sherlock's nemesis,
Moriarty.
It's like a Moriarty thing, where it's like, this guy, he's not just like brutal, power hungry, and maybe a little maniacal and tricky. He's also smart and talented. This guy is everything. And so it just like, it rounds him out to be like, okay, he's indomitable and he's imposing. And for some reason, the organ adds to that. That's really weird. Plus, the music is just delightful.
It's like a Phantom of the Opera. Instead of just having him sit there in a throne, just kind of waiting for you to saunter on over to him so you can battle it out and he can get the Triforce. He's got his princess. He's got, Christine Daae in her little rupee, and he is just playing along on the piano like, oh, you finally made it.
Yeah,
nice for you to catch up.
He's playing the diegetic music for you ascending the tower because he's expecting you. That adds a lot to it.
It's fun.
He's just sitting there waiting for you.
There.
Yeah.
He's probably been playing the piano the whole time, the organ, just waiting for you. He's like, okay, what temple is he on? I'll keep practicing.
Well, and the reason that Ganondorf wants you there is it's not just because he's the boss and he wants to fight you and like he's getting ready. Like when Ganondorf went to the Sacred Realm, when Link opened that door and he went to the Sacred Realm and he tried to seize the Triforce of Wisdom and the Triforce of Courage were unobtainable by Ganondorf, and they latched onto Zelda and Link respectively. And so Ganondorf,
if you're unworthy of owning the entire Triforce,
then you get the one
that it splits.
Yeah, well, you get the one that corresponds most closely to you, and then it splits and goes to the other people who are most worthy. In this case, Zelda and Link. And so Ganondorf knows that if he lets Link run around and do his thing, that sooner or later Link is going to come to his tower. And sooner or later, and he says this as much when he captures Princess Zelda, he says, I knew if like you said, Emily, I knew if I let this kid run around, Zelda would appear. So Zelda appears, Ganon brings her to the castle. So now Ganon has the Triforce of Power. He has Zelda, who has the Triforce of Wisdom. And he knows that if he has Zelda, that Link will come to the castle, to his tower. And so it's another argument for Ganondorf being a tactician. He's like, I don't need to go gather the Triforce of Courage or Wisdom, because if I let Link run around, he'll do it for me. And so when he's playing the organ, just waiting for you to get there, just like waiting and waiting. And then you come upstairs and he uses one of my favorite lines of dialogue in a game is he turns on and he whips his cape like in a very dramatic fashion. And he goes, these toys are too much for you. Return them to me. And then he goes, oh, and he holds out his hand and they're like noise. And then this is another argument for Navi. Navi is unable to help you in this battle. She goes, Link, his powers are too strong. I can't help you in this battle. You're on your own. And so this guide and this help that has been there for you the whole game is stripped away from you in this moment. And you might feel like, whatever, it's just a little fairy. But then when the battle starts with Ganondorf, you can't Z-target him. Do you know why? Because Nintendo contextualized Z-targeting to Navi, and you can't do it without her. I didn't notice that until this playthrough. I don't know why I never noticed that, but it's like Navi's gone and you can't Z-target. And I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, it was a really cool way of stripping away a very basic mechanic that you've come accustomed to.
Yeah.
Very creative.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you imagine having Z-target and doing Dead Man's Volley? That would be so easy.
It'd be so easy. Yeah. So then you have this Dead Man's Volley again, and Ganondorf is shooting light balls at you. You slash him back.
Sorry,
and
Monty Python.
You're fine. So you're slashing them back and forth, and then this is another cool part when his magic ball hits him again, it loops around and it hits him, and then you have to shoot a light arrow at him to get him to become vulnerable. And then once this happens, Ganondorf's power subsides for a moment and Navi can come back, and then you can Z-target him for a moment. And you can Z-target him, you jump in and you hit him, and then Navi has to fly away again. So again, Nintendo is allowing you Navi to not just be a game mechanic, but to be a character that is tied to this moment. So super cool.
Like I said, I've seen this game played so many times. I've played it myself, but it's been so long. Do you know how long I played tennis with him until I finally was like, oh, the light arrows. And so like
I do?
Yeah, I kept like, knocking him down, or he didn't go down completely, but I kept like hitting him with the light. And then I did that multiple times. I'm like, I feel like he should be moving on to like another phase at this point. And I finally was like, oh, maybe the light arrows. So yeah, I played tennis for a while before I figured that out this time, which is great. That's great to like take breaks from games so that it feels new again, Yeah.
So I think that the atmosphere and just like the general theme of this battle is so cool. And you strike Ganon down, you get your last hit in, and he collapses on the floor, and indignant and in disbelief, he says that he can't believe he's been beaten by this kid, and then he stands up and with one last shout, he brings the castle down. He collapses his own castle as a last-ditch effort to kill you and Zelda for daring to step in the way of his plans.
Like Sauron and
like Sauron, yeah. I never noticed that. But then this leads to a cool sequence where you have to flee the castle as it's crumbling. And you have 3 minutes to do so. So you're running out of the castle. You have to fight some enemies. There are some things that are kind of blocking you on your way. And so it's a tense moment. It turns out that like you have plenty of time, But it still feels very tense because of the timer and because there's rubble falling all around you and there's really intense music. Things are on fire. It's like, it's a tense moment.
Yeah. And then right before you get to the end, you're like, oh, now I have to fight a bunch of people and I don't have time for this shit.
I don't got time for this. Get out of my way. But yeah, and so I think it's an effective like thing, and then it's what you think is a coming down, where you're like, oh, I did it. You're coming down, but then you realize that escape wasn't. It was building you up for what comes next, which is, in my opinion, my favorite boss battle. I won't say it's the best boss battle because it's not very complex. It's not really technically like insane, but the theming is next to none, in my opinion. You get down from this crumbling castle. You've just defeated Ganondorf. And Zelda, heaves a sigh of relief and says, it's finally over. And just as she does that, you hear a thump amongst the rubble that used to be the castle. And Zelda gasps, and she says, Link, go check it out. You go to get close to check it out. Ganondorf's body with glowing eyes bursts from the rubble. He holds up the back of his hand. You see the Triforce of Power. And then he, in front of your eyes, transforms into a giant beast, which is just not what I was expecting to happen the first time I played this game. It was so incredibly intense. And then you have to fight this final form of Ganon. He stands in front of you, towering with two swords in his hands. He roars as, a ring of fire surrounds the battle arena. It starts to rain. Lightning strikes just behind you as it does. And the arena is so dark that you can't get a very clear look at Ganon. And it just creates this incredible, oppressive, and final atmosphere. And I love that every time you face a boss, it says, it has a little subtitle and then their name. Like, example, the first boss you fight, it says, Armored Arachnid Queen Goma. And then when you fight Ganon, he doesn't have a subtitle. You know who this is. This is what it's been building for. He doesn't need an introduction. A title card pops up that just says Ganon. And then you have to go for this final showdown. You guys, I love this so much. Tell me about do you remember the first time you fought Ganon this way, where you watched someone fight Ganon? Tell me about this experience. I want to hear.
No, so this is the David and Goliath moment. I was very impressed with how much they were willing to darken the scene between lightning strikes and everything, and have sort of that underglow of lava just sort of set the atmosphere of this imposing glow of the red to signify a threat. It's just everything around you is just perfectly framed and set to make you feel trapped and small against this towering beast. And he's ugly, he's pug fugly, he's ugly, as Mo Sislak would say. And and just the design choices, he's a warthog of sorts. I hadn't seen a monster design like this. It's usually tethered to something that and to this, I guess it is sort of like a warthog, but it was just it's a very clever original design that they went all in on. It did exist in Link to the Past, and they just took it to an 11.
See, but even in this, it's much different. It's not a directly oh, that looks like a boar or a giant pig. He's got pig-like features, but he's this weird, twisted, pot-bellied monster that you can't quite exactly what is that? It's Ganon. It's just Ganon.
Yeah, he went from the human-like Ganondorf to transforming into the Ganon that we are used to seeing in the older games in the top-down, where he does kind of look pig-like, but they did make it its own, and he's menacing, he's horrifying, and he's fun.
And he's animated incredibly well, just that snoot.
His little snout jiggle when he roars. I love it.
Jowls. They just everything that they went way too far on to make this feel bigger than you, because this whole game, you start as a kid and then they show you Ganondorf, and he like towers over you as he knocks you to the ground as he's riding out with Zelda, or to chase Zelda or whatever, or with, yeah, and he makes you feel small. And then you take the stones to the Temple of Time and you're like, I am now his equal, and I'm gonna go for it. And this is where he makes you feel small again. He makes you feel like a kid, but you're an adult, and it's just like, yeah, it's just like changing the power dynamic again. And you're like, have I gone through the rite of passage? Have I become an adult? And can I prove that that I have matured to the point of and have earned the courage and the bravery to be able to accomplish this? So it's the ultimate hero's story. It's quintessential. Like, that's one thing I just adore about this game, is because like as a kid I hadn't experienced what a quintessential like fantasy or an adventure or a coming of age or a hero's journey. Hadn't experienced any of that, and this game took all of those genres and it made the perfect story of that ascent to glory, to being a hero. And no game had ever reached those heights. And that's like, so when I see that it's one of two games like it's a perfect 100 on Metacritic, it's like, yeah, it's because contextually when I was a kid, this game defined every genre that it touched in a way that I hadn't yet understood as a kid, and it did it perfectly.
That was really beautiful, Shan.
I think that this is, like I said, one of my favorite boss battles. It's so intense and atmospheric and moody, and it, like Shan said, it tells this story, and that hadn't been done in quite a way up until that point. And so I think that this is the perfect culmination of everything that you've been on in this journey, that it all comes to this head. And it's, once you start the battle, it's not really overly difficult, and it doesn't need to be. I think it might even be worse if it was incredibly difficult. It's about the atmosphere, it's about the stakes, and it's about Link overcoming that obstacle more than it is about it being a technically very difficult boss fight. And so I think that it's just about perfect in my eyes. I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, I think this was the very first 2-part boss fight video game I think I can remember playing. And being just so unbelievably mad when the second part happens. Because
thought I already killed this guy.
Yeah, I thought I already killed this guy. But I think what's really cool about this, I mean, it sets up a whole trope that happens in so many different video games with different final boss stages. But it's really a microcosm of the entire game. This boss fight is, you have this moment where you think you're doing well as young Link. You have the stones, you're opening the sacred realm, and then it all comes crashing down with Ganondorf. And then you have to there's the whole second part of the game where you then have to take your courage, take your strength and knowledge to another level to actually finish the game. And so I think just this boss fight just perfectly culminates the entire game into a neat little package in one fight.
Yep. I just love it. I agree with all of that. And I love the way that you deliver the final blow. You are able to do enough damage that Zelda, from afar, is able to pin Ganondorf or Ganon down with some magic. And she goes, all right, Link, now, get him now. And you go up and you do this like 1, 2, and then hilt deep, stab him in the forehead, like the whole blade all the way in his forehead. And then he has this awesome animation where he hops up and he flails around, and then, because he's not dead, obviously, he takes more than that to kill Ganondorf. And then Zelda calls upon the power of the sages, and they all combine their power to seal Ganondorf away within the sacred realm. And it's such a cool ending to a boss battle, because it establishes Ganon as like this unstoppable force. He is power embodied. And it takes more than just a sword to defeat him. Even if that sword is the master sword, the sages have to seal him away because you can't kill him. And so, but then a nice happy ending where if you named your character something ridiculous like I did, you get the great moment where he says, "Curse you sages, curse you Zelda, curse you Snibbles," which is what I named Link this time. I always like to give Link a ridiculous name just so that serious moments are undercut. When we
Titty is my go-to, and it is never not funny.
If you name Link my dude, it turns everyone in Hyrule into someone really chill. They're like, "Yo, what's up, my dude?" It's always a good time. But this time I went with Snibbles, and it was great. It's always fun to hear Ganondorf curse Snibbles' name.
His last words.
Yeah. And then the game's over. We did it. It's almost over. And then they have a nice, lovely after credits party. Yeah, the denouement. Sorry, I didn't use the fancy word.
The douchey word.
But you have a really nice, as the credits play, it plays a really awesome medley of the music throughout the game, and you get to see all of Hyrule celebrating. It's a jubilee. You get that. It's a jubilee. But you also, just before that, you get a nice touching scene between Link and Zelda floating within what I think is the Sacred Realm. And Zelda says, "I have to send you back to your time." Link gives her the Ocarina of Time. She plays the Song of Time, sends him back to when he was a child. And so Link goes back to child. This is where the timeline fractures. We're a little stretched for time, so I don't think we'll get into that too much today. But the timeline... the timeline does fracture into two different things from that point, from where Link continues on as an adult and where it goes back to being a child. And that's mostly just for talking about future games in the series. But, and then you have this really nice moment after everyone in Hyrule parties. They're all coming together. Hyrule is safe and saved. You see all of the sages up perched on top of Death Mountain as the music crescendos. And then the music settles. You see the Master Sword, and Link places the Master Sword back on the pedestal as a child, and then the music swells, Navi flies away, and you get this lovely, in your heart. Yeah. And then, after the music fades, you see Link walk back into the courtyard where Princess Zelda is. It fades to a sepia tone, and then the words "the end" just come on as it plays Zelda's lullaby.
It's at that point,
Perfection.
And it is chef's kiss. I'm sure that you guys have memories of the first time when you got to this part of the game. I was 13 years old. I was playing on a Saturday, and I had just finished playing this game, and I was like in the middle of the Ganondorf boss fight, and my mom and dad were like, "Hey, you need to go mow the lawn." I said, "Okay, well, can I finish this first, and then I'll go mow the lawn as soon as I'm done with this?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I finished that part, and they play Zelda's lullaby as you're going up, and it just and it brought an actual, for realsies, tear to my eye. It made me cry a little bit. I was just so invested in this story, and it was a point in time that I can remember how I felt and what it was like. And then I remember going out and mowing the lawn afterwards, and I just couldn't stop humming Zelda's lullaby in my head and getting myself all choked up all over again. I'm out there mowing the lawn, everything's fine.
A little 13-year-old.
And this game is what the reason I love video games. I had played video games before this. I've played a lot of video games since, but the Ocarina of Time is the reason I love video games. It's the one that changed it for me. It had done something that nothing had done for me before then, and it's just something special. And I love. So, do you guys have any fond memories of when you beat the game for the first time?
I don't remember specifically finishing it the first time. Does anybody else?
I remember watching all throughout. I remember freaking out. All of us were losing our minds when we realized that Sheik was Zelda.
Oh yeah,
one of the greatest twists in video game history. We
no one saw that coming. Now looking back, you're like, well, that was obvious. Yeah, we didn't even talk about that.
I've played it so many times that I just glossed over it. But yeah,
I remember
Zelda. Spoiler
losing
alert.
my cookies. If they got to the end, I think they would already know. But yeah, I remember just all of us collectively losing our minds.
Game.
Yeah. What, Shan?
No, it was an interesting thing about Sheik because they pulled no punches. They straight up called Sheik a him the whole game.
Multiple times, yeah.
It's not subtle subterfuge where like maybe you'd watch The Prestige and you watch it a second time and you're like, oh, they're flaunting it in your face, you just didn't see it. It's more like, no, they're straight up just lying to you. This is a different person.
Just complete deception.
Yeah. And so that first reveal, and you're just like, but like that made me realize, replaying it this time, every encounter that you have with Sheik throughout the game, there's a quasi romantic undertone to it that feels weird when you think of it.
Just very confusing before you realize who Sheik is. Yeah,
exactly. There's like a leitmotif that they play, and there's this like language that Zelda uses, that she's kind of lofty, and she's speaking about these like thematic elements of friends and love and whatever, and you're like, and it kind of like gets you in this sentiment and this mood while the music is playing. And if you replay it and you know it's Zelda, you're like, oh, she loves Link, and you actually feel it the second time. But it's just subtext, and it's subconscious the whole time that you're playing it, and you're like, oh, I understand why I felt that way now when I replay it.
And you don't expect Zelda to be out in the open, dressed like a man and doing flips and cartwheels all over the place. She's jumping off of high buildings. I love how when you're at the lake, how she throws a Deku Nut or something, and then you turn back and you're like, oh no, she's gone. And then suddenly in the distance, you just see her just doing this like high dive, jumping into the water. I thought it was so comical the way that they did that, where it was like she didn't really disappear. She just jumped and, tried to get away with it. So yeah, you don't expect the princess Zelda to be out in the open doing all these flips. Again, like they're saying him a lot, he, and the name is Sheik, and so you just think it's this mysterious man who's helping you all throughout. So that was mind-blowing. I remember all of us just losing it. So I remember that much more than the actual ending and reacting to the ending.
Yeah. And then
that was a crazy moment for the first time that happened. Yeah.
So the emotional beats with Zelda, I have to really highlight, because those are my favorite parts of the game. It's that reveal, and then it's the denouement when she's like talking to him in the spirit realm, and then she holds his hand and to get the ocarina back, and then says, I have to send you back. And you could feel that there's this tension, sexual tension, if you will, of like, she's sad to send him back because she is in love with him, and sending him back means that they won't be together at that time, which makes, when they revisit back at Hyrule Castle, it's like, oh no, they can and will, it just hasn't happened yet, which makes so the fact that it just shows them if that freeze frame of them on opposite sides, are like, oh, okay, they do get that chance. But that scene of Zelda playing Zelda's lullaby to send him back is very powerful. And I was struck this time by playing the game that as a kid, I was playing it from the perspective of a kid not wanting to grow up. But the game says, this is what it takes to grow up. You have to be courageous, and you have to take on your fear, and so it's just this story of becoming an adult. And this time I played it from the perspective of an adult, and I was trying to remember my childhood, and so it's the reason the Ocarina of Time works as a perfect story in a game is because you get both sides of that, because it tells the kid story and the adult story, and you look at it from both angles. And I feel like I haven't looked into it. I don't know what Shigeru Miyamoto was going for, or whoever directly like wrote these parts, but it felt like when he's being sent back, it's like, don't miss your childhood. like, don't grow up too fast. There's still so much to, like, this is important and you will get there, but go back and go enjoy your childhood for what it is, before you lose it, because you won't get it back. And it feels like that's the message he's sending in that scene. And now, again, as an adult looking back, it's like, you know, I do I take things too seriously? Do I take my life or do I not enjoy things the same as I did as a kid? Do I not take those moments to appreciate things? Like, games now, I kind of just like collect them and play them, but like there were times where like Ocarina of Time was like the only game that I had and I enjoyed over like 2 or 3 years, and it was bigger than life, and so games were fewer and far between, and they were more meaningful and impactful in my life. And now are just like games, just sort of bland anodyne entries into my life that I need to collect to feel like I've caught up on everything. And it's like it's reminding me, appreciate things and love things as you did as a kid, because it was special then. So I just like I felt all these things as I was replaying it, and these scenes that were very well directed for an N64 game. I felt like the camera work and the writing and everything, very well done.
It was so much more emotional than it had any right to be, really. Like, it was fairly limited hardware, even for the time, and it was like, but it was able to get across these really emotionally impactful moments, with, you know, what is now pretty limited hardware, and, you know, no motion capture, no voice acting, but they had these really emotional moments that kind of changed how, like I said, that the ending of that game, it stuck with me for weeks, for months, for years even. Like, I still think about that, and it was just like, it's the go-to game. It's when I reference games that like give me the feels, Ocarina of Time is near the top of that list. So
yeah,
I love it.
It was formative, and it I don't know what else to say. It meant so much, and it set the standard for quality story driven games, that no other game really kind of lived up to.
Yeah, it was a landmark title that changed gaming forever.
Yeah, it was ahead of its time.
It was far ahead of its time, and it still holds up today, and it's still very fun to play to this day. I love Ocarina of Time. We all love Ocarina of Time. I have loved talking about it. I could talk for much, much longer. And
Tucker
to that
could
note,
talk for much, much less.
Tucker
I could talk,
he's
I
got
could
lots
talk
to
for
say.
minutes, nonstop.
Minutes.
Before we close it out, I have a collection of some fun facts. Do we want to do some quick fire fun facts about Ocarina of Time? All right. So some of these are ones that I already knew and I just wrote down because I knew them. Some of them were ones that I looked up and I had no idea. Super completely new to me. So, fun fact number 1, Koji Kondo, the composer of all of the music, said that one of the greatest challenges of his career was composing songs for the ocarina, because you're limited to 8 notes. Or not 8 notes, I don't know why I said 8. You're limited to 5 notes. And so for him to make a bunch of really iconic songs with just 5 notes is incredible. Songs that they've used still today, Zelda's Lullaby, Soraya's Song, Song of Storms, Epona's Song, all really iconic classic Zelda tunes, and that was one of the greatest challenges of his career. Also, during the daytime, climbing up the chains of the drawbridge right next to Hyrule Castle, you can climb up those chains to the top, and if you jump off, you get 20 rupees each. It's a fun little secret for that. Signs can be directionally cut. So if you slash diagonally, it cuts diagonally, horizontally, vertically. They can be cut based on the direction that you're slicing your sword. And then you can repair those signs by playing Zelda's Lullaby. They go back together. Broken sign
really
pieces.
Weird thing to code.
Yeah, like they were just having fun at that point, doing whatever. Also, broken sign pieces have some physics attached to them. You can further mess around with them using a megaton hammer or bomb. You can smash them around with a megaton hammer, blow them up with a bomb, and they'll scatter all around. Also, when you visit Hyrule Castle for the first time as young Link, the reason it's under such tight guard is because the guys in Castle Town wearing the red and blue shirts that are laughing at each other and telling jokes and stuff, they tried to sneak into Hyrule Castle recently, and they're talking about that towards the beginning of the game, which is why the castle's under such tight guard at the beginning of the game. Fun fact. You can change the pitch of ocarina notes using the D-pad or the control stick. This is how some people learn to play crazy, impressive renditions of actual real-life songs on the ocarina. So YouTube that, super entertaining few minutes for you. Malin, the girl from the ranch, wears a little Bowser emblem on her kerchief that looks like Bowser's face. There are Mario paintings in the Hyrule Castle courtyard. Shooting at one with a slingshot gives you rupees. Shooting at the other one, a guard will pop out and throw bombs at you.
He just leans over.
He just leans over, no animation.
Don't do that.
Yeah, and then throws a bomb at you. And then this is one that I didn't know, but that I think is super funny. So when you're doing the mask quest in Ocarina of Time, you trade masks with different people throughout Hyrule. If you give the Keaton mask, which is the yellow one that looks sort of like a Pikachu, to the guard at Death Mountain, he gets very happy and stuff. But if he asks you for the mask, you bring the mask and then you refuse to give it to him, he says, "Can I have it?" and you say no, then he closes the Death Mountain gate and he won't open it again until you sell him the mask. So he will, if you offer him the mask and then say no, then you can't play the rest of the game until you give him the mask. He's so petty that he says, "Nope, you have to give me the mask." So I thought that was another like silly thing to code that they did that. Speaking of masks, the bunny hood in this game doesn't give you the super speed that it gives you in Majora's Mask, but if you wear it in Hyrule Field during the nighttime, it keeps Style Children from spawning. So, bet you didn't know that. Maybe you did.
I didn't encounter any of those Style Children this entire game because I am really good at rolling between areas.
Just super fast. Link's too speedy for the Style Children. And then the Skull Mask will keep Keese, or the bats, from attacking you. So that's a fun fact too. Characters all over Hyrule have modified dialogue depending on what kind of mask that you're wearing, which is cool. Also, if you play Epona's song for any cows, they will give you milk in your bottle. And then Gossip Stones are those little stones with the Sheikah eyeball on them throughout Hyrule. They have all sorts of different interactions that you can do with them. If you play Zelda's Lullaby, they'll give you a fairy. If you play the Song of Storms, they'll give you a big fairy that you cannot catch in a bottle, but that refills your hearts and magic. If you throw a bomb at it, it'll count down and then blast away like a rocket ship. If you hit it with your sword, it will boing and give you the current time. If you hit it with a megaton hammer, it'll flatten like a pancake. And then if you hit it with an arrow or a hook shot, it does a weird kind of vibraty jiggle thing. So the devs had a lot of fun messing around with those Gossip Stones. They do all sorts of weird things.
It's like we can't even get completed games now.
And back in the day, they were going ham, doing whatever. They're like, we've got extra time. What should we do with these Gossip Stones? I don't know. Make it blast off like a rocket ship if you hit it with a bomb. Like
where Metroid Prime 4 has taken like 5 years, I'm fully expecting to have something like this in Metroid Prime 4 now.
I want bombable Gossip Stones. In Metroid Prime 4. Yeah. All right. I have a few. Is this fun for everybody? I have more? Do you want me to keep going? I've got a few more. I'll keep going.
They're just trying to fax for me, but yeah. Keep on going.
So this was one that I didn't know, but that I found really fascinating. So if you plant magic beans, when you come back as an adult, you can fly on them. But if as a kid, when they're still small, you water them, like if you play the Song of Storms or if you dump a bottle of water on them, they will grow tall and spit out a bunch of fairies. I didn't know that. And then they shrink back down again. So that's fun. If you walk around with the Deku stick near some butterflies, if you walk very slowly, you can sometimes get a butterfly to land on the Deku stick and it will turn into a fairy that you can then catch in your bottle.
Oh, I've done that before.
Yeah, I was like, I swear there's something you can do with these butterflies, and I couldn't remember what it was, and that's what it is.
That was another one that I did not know. Super interesting fact.
I feel like I looked that up on GameFAQs back in the 90s or
GameFAQs, when all the walkthroughs were just like a text document that you had to parse yourself.
Or cheatccc.com.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I just remembered cheatcc.com. That just brought back a whole flood of memories.
I was a GameFAQs guy myself. That was my go-to thing. But I had terrible internet or no internet, so I'd usually have to have my friends like look it up for me, and then they'd print it off and bring it to school.
Like
Yep.
MapQuest.
I had for the trading quest to get the Biggoron sword in Ocarina of Time, I had the steps printed out and folded up, and I stuck it like in the game case so that I wouldn't lose it because I didn't have internet yet. So.
Yeah. Speaking of printing these things out, there was a time where after school, Emily and I had to live at the library to wait for my mom to come pick us up because she was working. And they had unlimited printing because they didn't know people like me existed.
He was a menace to the library.
I would go through like reams of paper to print out game facts, and I didn't know how to like size down the font or anything, so I just had like 3-inch binders full of walkthroughs and sheets for like Game Boy N64 games, and I just like I'd be able to like pull up and it's like, okay, how do I get Mew in this Pokemon
Hang on, let me
game?
check my encyclopedia.
Yeah.
Shan's destroying the planet one walkthrough at a time.
Global warming is Shan's fault.
They
100%.
definitely banned that practice when I was there.
Yeah.
Because of Shan. They're like, this kid. All right, well, I
Shan
have about...
Miller is a menace.
And a menace. I got about 10 more of these. We'll just go through them really quick. Go through them really quick. I wrote down a lot. This was fun for me to look up fun things. This was one that I didn't know. If you kill a Redead that's near other Redeads, its corpse will obviously fall down, and then the other Redeads will gather around it. Are they mourning? Are they eating it? What are they?
Nice.
What are they doing? Yeah,
Oh.
Isn't that nice? They're having a little funeral or a feast. Who knows?
Hey,
I did not know that.
Necro-cannibalism.
Necro-cannibalism, super gross.
Or necrophilia.
The
I was about to
Goron
say, or is it
It's probably
necrophilia?
necrophilia. Based on all the other sexual references in this game, it's definitely necrophilia.
Yeah, of course, obviously.
Is it
it is.
necrophilia if they're both dead?
Maybe it's just
No,
philia.
then it's just philia.
Homo necrophilia?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that's a different thing. That's a gender thing.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. Homo. I was just helping a child with math or with science homework. Homogeneous.
Yeah.
There's like
homogeneous.
singular and whatever. It's not just that, but go on.
Homogeneous? What are you talking about?
Sure. I don't know. I just saw it written down. Go on.
All right, going on. The Goron tunic protects you from poison as well as it does lava. So if you hop in poison, the Goron tunic will protect you from that. Probably using just the same code as they did for like the lava surfaces for the poison surfaces. So fun fact.
That bums me out because of Bongo Bongo.
Now you know.
Oh.
The Fire Temple, the song that played in the background of the Fire Temple in the very first release of the game originally contained Islamic chants that the devs did not know were Islamic chants when they put it into the game. And then it was pointed out to them and they removed it from all later versions of the game. But it was like freeware that they got off of wherever you get freeware chant, like music and stuff like that.
IslamicChants.com.
Yeah,
Because
IslamicChants.com.
Islamophobia, right? Is that what you're thinking of?
And so
It's not
they
like
just
were
because
satanic.
I think it was just
but-
inappropriate.
Well, it was just Nintendo
guess
doesn't
they
like to
don't
have
like
a lot of religious imagery in there. Yeah.
And they don't like that is Muslims don't really like religious appropriation, I guess I would say.
Yeah. And so it was removed from all later versions of the game. But if you were lucky enough to
Because of
snag like
jihads.
an original printing of Ocarina of Time, the Fire Temple has Islamic chants in the music. Fun fact. You can pound Deku Scrubs into the ground with the Megaton Hammer. If you're like far away from a Deku Scrub and you pound the ground with the Megaton Hammer, they will pop right out of the ground and then you can go talk to them without having to block it with your shield.
Oh, that's fun.
Link, if you leave him idle in cold areas, he sneezes. Bottled blue flames can destroy bombable walls. So if you bottle blue flames from the ice cavern and you do it instead of a bomb, it'll blow up the bomb wall.
What?
Right?
Yeah, I just found that out too.
That was the new one that I didn't know until I was doing my research. And that's crazy. I haven't actually tried it out, but I watched a
Who's
video of it.
walking around
So.
with the blue flames anyways?
Dummies. I don't know. People
Fairies
who
are
Doesn't
nothing.
get
trying to break
fairies.
the game. Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as you can.
Those
like,
are for
you get-
fairies. Yeah.
You get the Lon milk, you just chug that back and you go get some fairies. Like,
So also, when you go to the fishing hole, you can steal the fisherman's hat with your fishing pole. You cast a line, you can steal his hat.
Very hard to do.
I think
It is
Shan did
very
it.
hard to do, but you can do it. And then furthermore, if you steal his hat and then you cast your line again into the water, he throws an absolute fit and charges you 50 rupees for his hat. And then even more on top of that, if you do those two things, if you steal his hat and then you throw it into the water, when the fisherman appears in the end credits, he will not be wearing his hat. Because you stole it from him. That's your fault. You stole his hat.
Couldn't you get like a special lure too, or is that just normal part of?
Yeah, you can get a medium lure and a heavy lure, I think. Yeah, that help you catch different kinds of fish.
But yeah, it is very hard to get that hat off.
But you did it, right?
For hours, yeah.
I remember watching.
I remember hearing about it as a kid, and I don't know if I ever actually did it or not. I think I probably tried for a while and I was like, this isn't worth it. I gave up.
It's the wrong kind of hard.
It's the wrong kind of hard.
As Eric would say.
It's my favorite. It's not fun hard. It's Mega Man hard. That's
yeah,
the
but back
difference.
then, we didn't have anything better to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're gonna go steal the fisherman's cap.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Got home from school, it got yourself a snack, and that's all you're doing for the rest of the night.
You've just printed out your game facts.
You're ready to go. You steal the
A
fisherman's
4-inch
hat.
binder full of free prints and size 18 font.
Just as big as inconvenient as possible. All right, I have a couple more about Ganon, and then I'm all done. So, when you're battling Ganondorf and you're doing the Dead Man's Volley, if you don't feel like using a sword, you can use an empty bottle to hit his little lightning bolts and stuff back at him. The same thing also works with Phantom Ganon doing the Dead Man Volley. You can hit it back with a bottle.
That's silly.
Is that an incident of the code, or like?
No idea.
They were just having fun with it.
It's an incident of the code, or it's a very weird, deliberate joke. Like,
for it to be something that the code did accidentally, then the bottle would have to hurt enemies as you swipe at them with.
Or maybe there is another shared property with the sword that has to do with the swinging animation that reacts to the Dead Man Volley ball, but doesn't correlate with damage.
I don't
Maybe
know.
it's the way you hold the bottle.
Right at the tip of the sword. I don't know.
I don't know exactly why it works that way either, but you can totally do it. You can beat Ganondorf with an empty bottle.
There's a hitbox on that bottle that volleys it back, because there's a hitbox on the sword that hits it back.
Maybe
So
the hitbox that correlates with like when you catch a fairy or something, they had to have a hitbox for the swiping of the bottle. Maybe that is what reacts to the magic attack for the Dead Man's Volley.
If swinging volley works,
yes,
but the hitbox is different depending on item.
Yeah, that could be it. We solved it.
Did it. Shan coded Zelda.
Shan coded Zelda. Also, speaking of original releases for the first release of Ocarina of Time, at the very end of the boss battle with Ganondorf, instead of vomiting up green, he coughs up red blood. And at the end of fighting Ganon, when you stab him in the head, it shoots red blood everywhere instead of a weird green particle effect. So Ganon used to bleed at the end, like quite a bit. He coughed up a bunch of blood, and then So
and they just changed that.
And they just changed it to green so that it looked like he was vomiting instead of coughing up blood.
American censorship.
American censorship.
Probably to get rid of that M rating.
Yeah. Lame.
Pearl clutchers in the 90s.
The Pearl clutchers in the 90s. And then for our very last fun fact, the battle with Beast Ganon at the very end was originally designed to be very different. Ganon, when he transformed, was supposed to be the size of, like almost the size of Ganondorf's tower, and you were supposed to climb around on him and stab wing points, a la Shadow of the Colossus.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
But they were unable to get it to work with the hardware because, N64, and so they went with what they did instead. But that was the original plan.
They couldn't have taken out
I want a remastered of this game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a Shadow of the Colossus style boss fight. Yeah. So those are all my fun facts. There was a lot of them. I'm sure there's so many that I didn't get to because there's so many cool little things about this game. But yeah.
I was gonna say, like, as far as I know, like some of the temples and elements and stuff are like kind of correspond to like Japanese Shinto belief that there's a spirituality and aliveness in like plants and other things like that. So I think that's some of where they derive the mythology of the temples and all that stuff. And then also, Zoras are roughly based on the Japanese mythology of kappas. So look up those creatures. And
Oh, I think I have a sticker of a kappa on my
Kappa
computer.
was detated.
yeah, and they're like water monsters in Japanese mythology.
Oh no, I
Very
have
cool.
a different kind of mermaid-looking one sticker that I picked up in Japan. This is roughly what they look like.
Ooh,
Yeah,
very
that
cool.
is a Zora.
It's like a ninja
That's
turtle.
what you are betrothed.
It's like
to.
a ninja turtle.
That's what Link is marrying. He's marrying a creepy ninja turtle.
It's the turtles. They went through the sewers. It emptied out into the rivers and the lakes, and it turned into Zoras.
All right, everybody.
This is-
I don't
this
have
is what
anything
does-
else. Yeah.
Well,
that's-
this is what the sorority house Kappa Kappa is named after.
Is it really?
course.
Are you joking?
No, that's a Greek letter.
Oh, I
Yeah.
never know with you.
Now, Kappa Kappa Kappa, they
Oh.
have some
They are,
serious.
Not the
Serious
kids.
They're all
Hey.
turtles.
Some Kappaphilia.
Oh.
Not to be confused with coprophilia.
No. What is that quote? You know what I've always wanted to try? Coprophilia? Pizza
Coprophilia?
pie. Wait, what?
Oh,
It's
I just
from-
watched that from Into
Yeah,
the
What
Shadows.
We Do in the Shadows,
You
yeah.
guys will be proud. What We Do in the Shadows. You guys will be proud of me. I watched the first season of What We Do in the Shadows. I finally
Oh,
started
I'm
it.
so proud
It's
of you.
hilarious. Yeah.
It is fantastic.
Snaps for Eric.
Snaps for me. Well, I don't have any more Zelda stuff. I mean, I do. I could talk for hours and hours, but that's everything I had specifically planned for this session. So
Beautiful game.
it's basically perfect in my eyes. I mean, I know that it's not technically perfect, but it's my favorite, and I love it more than any other game.
It transcends.
Eric, are you crying?
Yes, a little bit.
Eric, is that a Muppet Baby tattoo?
I am now cutting off Phyllis's head with a chainsaw.
Anyway, so thank you for joining us, and next we're gonna do Majora's Mask or Mahora, if
Majora's
Yes.
Majora's
Majora's
Mask.
Mask.
to be fancy.
Majora's Mask.
Which we just found out Tucker did not know was a sequel to this game.
Tucker doesn't know a lot of things. He's a dumbass.
Yeah. Again, see, N64 like single player games are a big black hole. Outside of, I think, probably Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Well,
My
yeah, everybody's played
N64
Conker's
is
Bad Fur Day.
mostly Mario Kart and Mario Party and some like snowboarding games, I think.
Let's see your callus.
The Palm Gallus for Mario Party.
Prove it.
Actually, that's the wrong hand. It's definitely
Just-
that.
Oh.
Anyway, nobody's gonna get that joke, so clip that out.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's a callback.
So it's a callback, but that's great because we now have recorded for 2 weeks instead of one. That's efficient. Let us know if you like us branching off into some of these older seminal hits, and we're kind of just pushing to like games that everybody knows, because I don't know that everybody's gonna pick up and play a game with us, and if we do that, we're going to probably like intersperse it with these regular games every week, so that there's always something for the regular subscribers to listen to, because everybody has played these games, right? So yeah, that makes sense to
Give
me.
us some recs. We'd
The
love
classics,
to know what
the
you want
big
to talk
hitters.
about.
Yeah. You won't, but we're asking you.
But
And-
do it anyways.
And maybe it'll overlap and it'll get bumped up.
So listen on Mondays unless Emily sleeps in, and listen on Thursdays to Eric's Indie Corners, and we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
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 Outro. Bleepy doof, bleepity bloopity blow.